Hello, welcome to the Self Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 2 Empirical Approach, and our topic is Cultural Relativism. From the notion that the collection of data must be done without any subjective understanding, preconceived notions or prejudices came up. The dictum that the scientist must remain ethically and emotionally neutral. The rule of cultural relativism is the outcome of such a mindset. For one must accept that whatever does not belong to one's own culture is not wrong or strange. The principle of getting over the ethnocentrism or regarding only one's own conceptions and values as proper is something that is taught to all students of the social sciences, but is the most difficult to overcome. I give one instance from my own field experience. While on a field tour to an interior village of the Rajasthan, with a batch of students, we realized that in most marriages that took place in this region, the bride was older in age to the groom. While talking to one man whose wife was 8 years older to him and whom he seemed to love very much, I asked a rather foolish but to me at that time obvious question. Why are the women older to their husbands? The man looked at me in surprise and asked a counter question. Are they not in our community? And seemed surprised when I told him that they were almost invariably younger. His surprise made me realize the ingrained nature of our values and how difficult it is to overcome them. As we tend to take many things that are common in our own culture as natural rather than social. Similarly, Margaret Mead, in her work Sex and Temperament in Three Primitive Societies, had undermined all notions of femininity and masculinity held as natural in Western societies. My own class went into the squeals of laughter when I described the men in their curls and makeup flirting with the plain-looking women of the Tekambuli, New Guiana. Whether or not Mead's description were correct, they certainly dispelled the myth of what is natural. The objectivity that Durkheim had aspired to introduce into the social sciences presumed that things could be identified according to their external observable characters, and that it was also possible to classify similar phenomena. A very important dimension of classifying was how one defines a certain trait or institution. Many a time a feature may remain invisible or unrecognized if one looks for superficial resemblance only. In this sense, the definition of external visibility is to be exercised with caution. For example, the early anthropologists could not locate anything resembling a political institution among the so-called primitive societies. But later, with their seminal work African Political Systems, 40s, and Ivan Pritchard recognized the political as embedded in other social institutions, such as kinship, and they identified it not by its overt form but by its function. Durkheim undertook the analytical task of apprehending a mode of classification. In their essay Primitive Classification, Durkheim and Mauss distinguished symbolic classification of a moral or religious nature from practical schemes of technological distinctions. At the end of his introduction to Durkheim and Mauss essay, English translation, Needham says, it is the cardinal achievement of Durkheim and Mauss essay, with all its imperfections, to have conceived the analytical notion of classification in sociological inquiry. Now let us move to the next point, problems encountered in data collection. You may say that the scientific approach or even the social scientist approach is to accept something only by way of its inherent properties and not by any ideas regarding it. However, as has been realized with the respect to social data, such an observation without interpretations or the quest for inherent properties is an illusion. Everything about society follows a system of meaning bestowed on it by culture or by humans. For example, concepts like femininity, masculinity, etc. are all part of meaning systems. There may be many societies where all terms hold one meaning, and in others they may mean quite different things. There is also the question of subjectivity, as to what extent we can remain objective as observers when something that we see evokes intense emotions in us as human beings. In the social sciences, the question has still not been resolved completely, but certainly many social scientists have abandoned the stand of neutrality, and you will find many scholars, activists who consider it ethically wrong to remain neutral and emotionless when dealing with human situations. There is a recognition among such scholars that we can set up some universal criteria, such as universal concept of human rights to intervene in situations that we enter as observers. Sometimes the entry may be for the specific purpose of intervention, as in development studies or when human scientists are called in as advisors and consultants. But the debate whether to intervene or not to intervene is never ending. In the next discussion, we will take the topic difference between the common sense and science. Now let us wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the self-learning podcast.